couple of weeks ago, I was at a multi-congregational gathering of different churches, and in that time, there was a lady that testified, and in her testimony, she related that she grew up in a church. She said they had altars in the front, but we didn't use them. The only people that used altars were really bad people, so nobody used the altars. And so she said, but I remember when the preacher preached a sermon on the lost sheep. And she said, it spoke to me. I didn't go to the altar because we didn't do that. But she said, I went home and I prayed. I gave my life to Jesus. God changed my life. Went back Sunday night, told the pastor that I'd gotten saved. And he said, well, that's great. We're going to baptize you and go along those kinds of things. And as she was sharing, I won't share her whole testimony, but as she was sharing her testimony, the Holy Spirit just immediately said, you're preaching on that. You're preaching on that. Now, so I wrote it down. Now, Brother Brandon, you've seen me writing notes this week, and it's not that I'm writing notes for my own sermon always, taking notes on yours, but that particular night I wrote it down, and I thought, in my mind, well, this means that after I finish with the minor prophets that I'll preach on the lost sheep, but I just felt impressed that this is what the Lord had me to preach today, and so that's what I'm going to do. And I know that you don't mind if I change up what the Lord and do what the Lord's leading me to do, and if you do, then too bad, because I'm going to do it anyway, all right? And so we're going to be at the lost sheep. Would you turn your Bible with me to Luke chapter 15? There was a man that went into a pharmacy, and he went back to the back where the pharmacist was, and he asked the pharmacist, as he approached the desk back there, have you got something for severe laryngitis? And the pharmacist was busy putting pills in bottles and stuff, and he looks up and he says, good morning, sir, can I help you? Yeah, it went flat at Owensville too, I'm sorry. There's some times where I do it at Owensville and I just scratch it off my list. So laryngitis, you lose your voice, and yeah, all right. If you got to explain it, it's no good. But I'm trying to keep up with the evangelist. He's been telling some funny ones this week, so I had and it doesn't get any better than that, right? That goes in the dad joke book. So Luke chapter 15, let's look at the parable that Jesus tells here. Would you stand with me as we read the Word of God? Luke is in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then John. It's a gospel, and this is recounting the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And this is in the middle there where he's ministering and sharing. Verse 1, Luke chapter 15. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him. This is Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with them. If that's the worst you can get on anybody, right? So, verse 3, he told them this parable. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost. Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Let's pray. Father, thank you today for your word. I pray, God, that you would anoint the preaching of your word today. I pray that you would anoint the hearing of your word today. And most of all, Lord, would you anoint us as we seek to be doers of the word as well. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. You can be seated. Jesus tells this parable while he's, the context is he's being criticized. And you'll notice a lot of times in the New Testament that it talks about tax collectors and sinners. For most of them, that was an almost virtually synonymous term. And so when I pastored in Lexington, there was actually some folks who worked for the Internal Revenue Service, and they didn't really enjoy the fact that tax collectors and sinners were often paired together. But tax collecting is a lot different today. Now, you might still think that they should be paired together, but tax collecting is a lot different today. In that time, people would bid for the job. And so the highest bidder, Rome would give the job to the highest bidder, and then that gave you the ability, as long as you paid to Rome what you told them that you would raise, you could actually charge virtually anything you wanted to beyond what you pay to Rome. And so you had that authority, and you were backed up by the Roman government. So the centurions and the soldiers and the Roman government was backing you because you had the bid. And so you can imagine that what would happen is often these tax collectors would start to get greedy. You know, not just collecting the taxes that they were supposed to, not just getting a livable wage, but actually overindulging and manipulating and really stealing and abusing their position to fleece the people. And so, because they were so dishonest, they were often referred to. And it says here that Jesus was, there were tax collectors and sinners who were seeking to be around Jesus. They wanted to be around Him. They wanted to hear something from Jesus. They wanted to do things with Jesus. They wanted to be in His presence. There was something. Can I just say that I know we live in a time where there's a lot of the church people and the church are saying, well, you know, lost people don't want anything to do with Jesus. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that there are a lot of people who are hungry for a genuine Jesus. Does that make sense? And sometimes the church can try to get in the way of people getting to Jesus. This is what's going on right here, because when these people start to come around Jesus, guess who's upset about it? The Pharisees, the Sadducees. These are the religious leaders of their time. These are the people who are supposed to be helping other people come to know the Lord, walk in righteousness and holiness, and yet they are the people who, they can't find anything else on Jesus, so what do? Well, look what He's doing. He's receiving them. In other words, we're not just talking about He's at the marketplace and He walks by sinners and tax collectors. He's actually receiving them. He's welcoming them in. He wants to be in communication with them. And not only is He doing that, He's eating with them. This was too radical for them. In fact, can I just say, make sure that you don't have a counterfeit brand of holiness that says that holiness means that we've got to get away from sinners. Real holiness says God is so powerful that He could cleanse your heart, and you can go into a filthy, dirty world and you can still be clean, and you can help other people come to know Jesus. And so they're grumbling about this, and so they grumble, and in the grumbling, Jesus says, I want to tell you a story. Jesus liked to tell stories, and these stories we call them parables, and He always tells a story to make a point. Now, sometimes my jokes have nothing to do with anything, do they? You know, but like the laryngitis joke. But He always tells a story to make a point. Here's what He wants. He wants the listener to think about what He's saying. He could just say what needs to be said, but He tells a story often because they will resonate with the story. There's probably some shepherds in the crowd that are listening. So when He starts talking about sheep and shepherding, immediately their ears perk up, because I know about shepherding. I know about sheep. I've dealt with sheep. And so when He starts talking about this lost sheep, immediately they think, I know exactly what He's talking about. I know exactly where He's going. In fact, I found this video. I want to show this real short video quickly. Here's a video of a shepherd and a sheep. He saved the sheep. He saved the no, he didn't. Right back in the ditch. Now, I'm not a shepherd, but I guess that's fairly typical for sheep. Here's the next video. Listen, watch this one. Similar. Now, I'm not a shepherd, but that seems to be, these sheep are not very intelligent, right? You've literally just been freed, and that last saving, I mean, if you jerked me by the leg, when I got out, I'd probably run from you too, but I hope I wouldn't jump back in the ditch, right? And so, you know, these shepherds in the crowd, He's telling this story because there's going to be people this resonates with, but He's not really trying to tell shepherds how to better do their job. right? He's not really trying to say, I want to make you a successful shepherd. I want you to understand your trade. I'm taking you to school here so you'll be the best shepherd that you can be. In fact, he goes on to say, make it clear, I'm not really even talking about literal sheep. That's not what he's talking about. That's not what his concern is at this moment, is not sheep. But he's telling this story, and he talks about the sheep that is lost. It wanders away from the herd, and as the shepherd is leading the herd along, they have to go out, and the shepherd would kind of guide them, and they would go out into grassy areas. They would get food to eat. He would take them by still waters so they could get a drink to eat, and or a drink to satisfy their thirst, and everything that the sheep needed. That's what the shepherd was supposed to be doing, and that's what they were doing. But here's the thing about sheep. They don't seem to be very intelligent sometimes. Obviously, this video would kind of solidify that in your mind. However, what can happen sometimes with a sheep is they might see a clump of grass over there a little bit away and say, that looks like some good grass. Now, I don't know what their thought process is. I'm kind of making that up, all right? But they kind of wander over to that clump of grass, and that's good. And they see another clump of grass out a little farther and say, well, that looks good too. And so maybe I'll go wander over there. And they wander away. And maybe they look back and say, well, the herd's just right over there. If I need to, I can go. But the problem is the herd is kind of steadily moving on, slowly but steadily. And they're watching, not watching. And this one sheep kind of starts to wander. Then he sees, oh, there's a nice brook right there. And that water looks clean and refreshing, and so he goes over to the creek and gets away, and before long he's wandered so far away that he looks around and there's no herd, there's no shepherd. And somewhere along the way, because the shepherd's a good shepherd, he'll count his sheep. And he counts his sheep, and he had right on 100 sheep, and he counts the sheep, and he gets to 99, and he's at the end. Wait a minute, I'm missing one of my sheep. Now, I'm not a shepherd. I don't claim to be a shepherd. I'm not a farmer. I don't claim to be a farmer. I don't know anything about sheep, really. I know what they look like. I could pretty readily identify one, that kind of thing. That's about the extent of my expertise. But it would seem to me that if you lost one sheep, you wouldn't leave 99 to go find one. I mean, if you're looking at this as purely a business investment, there could be a chance that if you leave the 99, that something could come when you were gone. Some danger, something scare maybe the herd. They could scatter, that you could lose not just one, you could maybe lose 2 or 20 or 50 sheep. If you leave the 99 by themselves, they're not necessarily very good at kind of watching over themselves. And I've lost one, but I think that this shepherd had the heart of a shepherd. It wasn't just about the business transaction, but he actually cared about the sheep that he was tending. And because he cared about the sheep, and even though it was only one, and mathematically we would weigh it and say, well, wait a minute, we've got 99, stick with the 99. Maybe somebody else will come along. Maybe somebody will find the sheep, but that one sheep that is lost may already be gone. It may already be so far in danger that it's been caught by a wolf, it's been eaten, its leg has been broken, something has happened to that sheep that it will be unrecoverable, and you can't risk the 99 to go after the one. And yet, that's exactly what the shepherd did. Now, maybe that's standard shepherding practice, I don't know. But it just seems, from me, a layperson, when it comes to shepherding, that doesn't make much sense. Unless you equate in the heart of the shepherd. That the shepherd cares about the sheep. You know what this also a little troubling about? That really, when he's making a point here, is he's saying the 99 are the people in church on Sunday. And he's saying, I would even leave the 99 to go find the one. That is to say, while you might be very concerned about what the temperature is in the sanctuary right now, while you might be very concerned about the padding on the pew, you might feel like, there's not as much padding in this spot in my pew as there is some other place in it. God is more concerned about the one lost sheep. Do you know, for the life of me, I can't remember too many times. I can think of some historical in the history of the church where it's happened. But do you know what I found? Most church splits don't happen over lost sheep. They happen over things that don't really matter. They happen over the color of the paint in the nursery. They happen over the color of the carpet in the sanctuary. We just replaced our carpet not too long ago. You don't like it? I don't care. I didn't pick it out. Complain to somebody else. I care about the lost sheep. Do I have opinion? Yeah. Do you have opinion? Probably. But do you care about the lost sheep more than the comfort of the 99? You want to find a dead church? Find a church that doesn't have the heart of the shepherd. Immediately. I go to district assembly where all kinds of Nazarene churches, they kind of organize in districts. So we're on the Southwest Indiana district of the Church of the Nazarene. And once a year, Nazarene churches come together and pastors give reports. And you know what? It bothers me sometimes because there are some churches that have literally gone decades and no lost sheep have been found. They don't seem real concerned about it. I'd be broken over it. You're telling me that in the whole area that you minister, there's no lost sheep? Are you saying that because there's just a few people in your church, that you don't have enough people to tell one lost sheep that the shepherd is looking for them? Are you telling me that you don't have enough money? By the way, it don't take much money to tell somebody the shepherd's looking for them. And are you telling me that there's nobody in your region or in your area, nobody that you work with, there's no lost sheep that you know about that need Jesus? The shepherd is looking for the sheep. The heart of Jesus is for lost sheep. Do you know sometimes we have these different offerings that we do? And honestly, here's one of the things that I struggle with as a pastor, not just of this church, but just in general, that I don't want us to be confused with some of these televangelists who are trying to take advantage of people and get money out of them. Right? And so, but I want you to hear why we take up all these offerings for mission stuff. We have World Mission Broadcast. We have the Thanksgiving Missions offering, the offering for world evangelism, the Easter offering. We have all these different, alabaster offering, all these different things. You know why we do that? We do that because we have the heart of the shepherd. We care about the lost sheep. And I would challenge you to find a church that gives, as our church does. Do you know that over 10% every year of what's given here is not just used for ministry here? All right? All the tithes and offerings that come in here aren't just used for here. But we send that and support missionaries all over the world, missions work all over the world. And we make sure that at least 10%, it's usually over, but at least 10% of all the money that comes in this local church, we make sure that it goes not just to around the world, because we believe there's lost sheep everywhere. And I don't care what language they speak, I don't care what color they are, I don't care what country they're from, but everybody that is a sheep needs Jesus. So that's why we do what we do. It's what drives us. We want to have the heart of the shepherd. Sheep have a tendency to roam. They have a tendency to wander away, get distracted. Sheep need the flock. Now let me ask you this question. I'm not asking you to answer this question, but are you lost? I want you to think about that. And you know the worst place to be lost is? When you're insisting that you're not lost. Right? Now, ladies, please do not elbow your husband here. But have you ever been driving around And you're like, honey, maybe we should stop and ask for directions. And they say, we're not going to stop and ask for directions. I know exactly where we're at. And you're thinking, well, I just saw that house for the third time. And these trees seem very similar to me. Right? And your assumption is, men, again, wives, let me preach. You don't have to interfere. The assumption is that if I just drive around long enough, I'll find where I'm going. I'll happen upon it. I'll suddenly be there. All right? And now, that's not necessarily the way it works. That's the worst kind of lost, isn't it? You're lost, you don't even realize it, and you're insisting that everything's okay. But here's the problem with being lost. Lost sheep aren't even aware of the danger that they're in. There's a cartoon there's an old cartoon now. I think they've made a movie about it even, but there's an old cartoon called Mr. Magoo. Does anybody remember Mr. Magoo? Here's a slide. I'll get a picture of Mr. Magoo. This is Mr. Magoo, and I haven't watched this cartoon much, but this cartoon was about a guy, and he's got glass. Every episode, he starts out with glasses on, and somehow he loses his glasses or something happens, and he can't see. He's visually impaired. I mean, I don't think there's a pair of glasses that'll work for what he's got, because he is almost totally blind. But when he starts walking around, he is totally oblivious to any of the danger that he's in. He doesn't even recognize anything he's in. He'll walk through a construction site, and he'll be walking across a beam, and the crane is pulling the beam up. He doesn't realize now he's 20, 30 feet up in the air, and he's walking across the beam. And when you're a kid and you're watching this cartoon, you're thinking, oh, he's going to fall to his death. And right as he starts to step off of the beam swings right around, and he steps onto a building. And you're like, whoa, he's safe. And he didn't even know it. He's oblivious to everything. He's walking down the street, and there's a manhole, and you think, oh, he's going to fall in the manhole. It's it for Mr. Magoo. He's going to come to his end. But no, he doesn't fall in the manhole, because right as he walks over the manhole, a man with a hard hat starts to come up, and he steps right on his head and right across it. I mean, it's just stuff like that all the time. He'll walk through a war zone and be oblivious to everything that's going on around him, and unaware because he can't see, but that he's in danger and that he's in a dangerous situation, and yet it seems like every time everything works out just right. He'll go through the zoo. He's walking right through somehow he gets in the lion cage, but he goes through safely every time. He's totally unaware of the danger that he's in. But he's in danger nonetheless. You ever heard the phrase, what you don't know won't hurt you? That's not true, is it? One of my earliest memories, it's kind of a vague memory, but it's an early memory. My parents were pastoring, and we lived in Eastview, Kentucky. There was a Wesleyan church there that they were pastoring at the time. And I had gone into my parents' bedroom, and off of their bedroom, I guess, was like the master bath. And I'd gotten under the sink. And under the sink, there was a can. I don't know if they even still make it anymore, but of Comet. But it was the powder kind. You remember what I'm talking about? And you had to peel off the little top, and it was like powder. And it was for cleaning. It's a cleaning agent. I don't know what all's in it. But I was little. I can't remember how old I was exactly. But I went in there, and I saw that underneath the sink. And for some reason, I was in the bathroom, but for some reason I thought that might be edible. And so I took my finger, ran it across the top of that, and got that green powder, I think it was, on my finger, and I licked it. And it was kind of spicy, in case you ever wanted to know. Now, don't eat it. You know, I need a disclaimer somewhere here. Please do not try this at home, right? And but I tried it, and it was a little spicy. It didn't necessarily taste good, but it didn't taste real bad either. So I was getting ready to go for another, and this time my finger was wet, so I was really going to pick up that powder on the top. And it was about that time that my mom came in to the bathroom, and she saw me sitting in front of the sink with the doors to the cabinet under the sink open with that Comet in my hand, and my finger run across and about to get another snack, and she... You know how mamas do. They just go berserk, and she grabbed it out of my hand. Don't eat this, don't eat this. And panicking and all that kind of stuff. And you know why? She knew that just because I wasn't aware that I was in danger, I was still in danger. If you've got kids, you've known that maybe your child wanted to play out in the street. You know, hey, wait, I know there's danger there. Maybe they wanted to pet that dog that was foaming at the mouth and snarling, and you're like, no, I know there's danger there, whether you know it or not. And all of those kinds of things were taking place. In 1969, in past, I think it's pronounced Christian, Mississippi, there was a group of people who were preparing to have a hurricane party. There was a hurricane coming through. It was a storm named Camille, and they decided that they were going to go out on this beach when the hurricane came in and have what's called a hurricane party. I'm going to put another disclaimer here. Don't have a hurricane party, all right? Not wise. And there was one of the people that were a part of this group owned this little apartment complex. It was like a 3-story apartment complex, right? Maybe 250 feet from the surf and these apartments. And the storm was coming in that night. And before the storm got there, the chief of police was going around just making sure. They had already told everybody, you need to get out of the area. The hurricane's going to hit right here. We're probably going to get the brunt of it and all of those kinds of things. And so he pulls up and the lights are on. And there's a party going out, and a guy on the second floor balcony has got a beer in his hand, and he comes out and he's out there on the balcony, and the police chief, his name was Chief Jerry Peralta, he pulls up and he hollers at the guy and says, you all need to clear out of here as quickly as you can. The storm's getting worse and it's coming. But the guy just laughed at him. Just laughed, and then other people started coming out of the apartment onto the balcony as well, and they were laughing and jeering at the man, and one of them even said, this is my land. If you want me off, you'll have to arrest me. And so the chief of police, Peralta, didn't arrest anyone, and he wasn't able to persuade any of the people there for the hurricane party that they were in danger, and said the only thing that he could get out of them is to write down the names of their next of kin. And even while he was writing down the names of the next of kin, they mocked him and made fun of him and laughed and talked about how much fun they were going to have tonight in this hurricane party. And afterwards, he left. It was about 10:15 that evening when the front wall of the storm came ashore right there at that apartment building on the coast. Scientists clocked Camille's wind speed at more than 205 miles per hour. It was a record-breaking storm. Raindrops were hitting with the force of bullets, and waves off the Gulf Coast crested between 22 and 28 feet high. News reports later showed that the worst damage came at the little settlement of motels, go-go bars, and gambling houses known as Pass Christian, Mississippi. There were some 20 people who were killed at a hurricane party in front of some apartments off the beach in Mississippi. Nothing was left of the 3-story structure. It was torn away. Only the foundation survived, and there was only one young 5-year-old boy that they found the next day clinging to a mattress. They didn't know the danger that they were in. You know, it made me wonder. I wonder when they had that shock set in. I wonder when somebody paused in their revelry and their drinking and all the things that they were doing. I wonder when somebody said, you know, this wind's getting pretty bad. You know, these waves are getting pretty large. Maybe this wasn't a good idea after all. Maybe this plan to be out on the beach in the middle of the hurricane wasn't what it was cut out to be. Maybe the meteorologists were right. Maybe the chief of police that came by earlier, maybe he was correct in his warning. I wonder when that happened, because it would seem that it happened too late for them to flee for safety. If you're lost, you're in danger whether you know it or not. Lost sheep are in danger. They're in such great danger that the shepherd is willing to leave the 99 to go help the one. He's willing to allow the 99 to be uncomfortable and even feel neglected to go find the one. You know who doesn't like that? The Pharisees and the Sanhedrin. Do you know what bothers me a little bit? We all like to talk about the Pharisees, and we all want to talk about somebody else being a Pharisee, somebody else being part of the Sanhedrin. But you know what they were? They were kind of like pastors. They were the religious leaders. That puts me in that boat. Here's a question I've got to ask myself as I pastor a church. Do I care more about your comfort of the 99 than I do about the lost sheep? Do I care more about the comfort of the 99? Now, that's not just a question for me, that's a question for you as well. If you teach, if you lead in some way, if you participate, if you're part of the kingdom in any way, you've got to ask yourself, do I care more about the comfort of the 99 than I do the dangers of the lost one? If you don't hear another sermon I ever preach, or you haven't listened to anything that I've ever said, I want you to know that one of the ways that I will insist upon as a pastor, and I will persistently pursue, is that we have got to be a church pursuing the one lost sheep. This is not about your comfort. Do you hear what I'm saying? It's not about your comfort. It's not about, are you happy, and coddling you and coddling me and us getting our way and us doing everything all right, and do I like the music, and do I like the preaching, and do I like everything, and all that kind of stuff. If you want to find a dead church that is concerned about the 99, you can find them. But may we ever be a church that is concerned about the next lost sheep. God, give us the desire of the shepherd, the heart of the shepherd. God is speaking. Some people said, God doesn't speak to me. God's not speaking to me. If you're a lost sheep, can I offer to you that God has risked and given everything for you. His only Son came to die on the cross. What more needs to be said? You know, so I've had people say, well, if I had an encounter like Saul, who became Paul on the road to Damascus, that'd be helpful. If Jesus came to me when I was at my tax booth like he did Levi or Matthew, then and said, come follow me, that would be helpful. Now, certainly there's some times where I would find it helpful if God would email me a to-do list for the week. It's not that I don't have anything to do, but I want to make sure I'm doing what He wants me to be doing, right? And that would be helpful sometime. In fact, this week He's here, so I'm gonna steal some of your sermon, okay, brother? And he talked about God whispering to Elijah. And I may not word it correctly, but here. Why did God whisper to Elijah? Because He wanted Elijah to focus on his voice. Why does Jesus tell parables? Because He wants people to think about. He could have just given them the raw information. Here it is. I'm going to give you 5 points. Boom, 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 boom. Here's what I want you to do this week. Boom, 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 boom. He said, no, I want you to think about this. This whole thing about this one lost sheep, you got to get this. In fact, if you read on, this isn't the only story He tells. He tells stories about other lost things over and again. Why? He's re-emphasizing the point, Keep thinking about this. If I didn't get you with the shepherd thing, maybe I'll get you with the prodigal son thing. If I didn't get you with that one, maybe I'll get you with the lost coin in the house. Maybe I want you to understand, I want you to have the heart of the Father, of the shepherd, who cares so desperately about the one lost sheep that other things that sometimes we make the focal point of who we are and what we're all about, they don't matter near as much as that one lost sheep. And what the shepherd is saying to the people that day, the shepherd is saying to the people, is he's saying, even if you've been so ignorant and lacking wisdom, lacking insight, and you're having a party on the beach and you're not even aware of the danger, know that the shepherd is seeking for you. He's gone out in the storm. He's left the 99. Maybe they're uncomfortable, but he's left them and he said, I've got to get that one lost sheep. Not because they deserve it. I might have pulled them by the leg out of the ditch before and they ran right back into it. I may have got them out of the muddy pit before and they ran back into it. In fact, probably some of you can testify today. If you're a Christian today, you can probably testify looking back. You ever heard somebody say hindsight's 20/20? It means that I can see the past and how God was working better than I could see it in the moment. Remember that in the moment too. But you can look back and you can say, you know what? I wasn't even following Jesus. But the shepherd was lifting me up out of the muddy ditch. I wasn't even realize I was stuck in that crevice in the rock. But the shepherd had come. My problem was I kept running back into it. My problem is I didn't start following the shepherd at that time. But I'm looking back at how much God was watching over me. I was licking the comet off the can. But my mom came in and saved me. Do you hear what I'm saying? This is the heart of the shepherd, the great shepherd. And this is why it says that Jesus says, and when he finds the sheep, he kicked it because it was so dumb. Wait a minute. That's not what it says. He brought a 2x4. This sheep will never run away again. Oh. He picked it up. He put it on his shoulders. And he carried it all the way back. And you know what he did when he got back? He called his friends. He called his neighbors. He called the other shepherds. And he said, hey, guys, I want you to know that sheep that was lost, that sheep that was in danger, I wasn't sure if the wolf had got it already. I wasn't sure if it had fallen down a hole and died. But I found that sheep and I brought it home. And I want you to come over. Come over to my house. We're going to have a party tonight. We're going to rejoice because that one lost sheep, it's come home. I found it and I brought it back into the fold. And he says, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sheep coming home than 99 that need no repentance. Now, you want to know what I like as a preacher? I like a full house. I like it when the church is packed out. I like it when somebody's got to sit on the front row. I love it. I think Jesus likes that too. But you know what makes them have a party in heaven? Not a full building. But when one lost sheep comes home. You know what that means? Whatever you might believe about your life or what we do as a church or what you're doing as a Christian, know this, that we affect heaven even now. We're not even there. But when one lost sheep comes to know Jesus, the angels, the cherubim, the seraphim, the angelic choirs, they all get called out. Maybe they're still in bed. Maybe I don't know what they do up there. Maybe they're having a meal. Maybe it's snack time. Maybe they're doing whatever they're doing up there. I don't know. But there's a trumpet that sounds maybe all over heaven. Maybe there's a church bell that's rang there in heaven. And they all said, hey, there's a lost sheep that's come home. The Father found another sheep. Let's get the choir out. Let's get all the instruments out. Let's get the meal out. Let's get the party going. Let's celebrate because a sheep that was lost has come home. Hallelujah. I don't care how small the church is or how big the church is. There's nothing that impacts heaven more than one lost sheep coming home. Because the Father is full of joy. Do you know what that's like? You ever been at Walmart? And I need to stop pausing when I ask a question. It's like, have you ever been to Walmart? Yes, you have. Have you ever been to Walmart and you turned around and your kids were gone? You know that feeling of panic? Have you ever left your kids at church? Some of you have. I'm not going to call out any names. Have you? This has been years ago now. We were living in Greensburg, Kentucky, and we lived on a hill. Well, who doesn't in Kentucky? But we lived on a hill, and the backyard kind of slowly sloped, and then there was the woods. There were some woods behind our house, and when you hit those woods, it really started to. The decline was really steep. It wasn't a cliff, but it was a real steep decline. And our son Jacob had just started to walk. He'd been walking for a little bit, and Hannah was just a baby, and she was in the crib. And my wife and I were talking in the kitchen and about whatever we were talking about at the time. I don't remember the conversation. It wasn't nearly as important as what happened because my wife had a cat even then. Anytime I can vilify the cat, I'm going to take the opportunity. And this cat was meandering by, and we were in the kitchen and right next to the dining space, and then the back of the house, the dining space was there at the back, and there was some glass sliding doors, and the doors were open maybe a foot or two, maybe at the max, maybe just a foot, and the cat had gone out the doors, and Jacob, who was just a little toddler and just been walking recently, followed the cat, walked right out the door. Well, we weren't paying attention. And they walked right out the door. He walked right out the door. And we're talking, and all of a sudden, my wife had that mom moment. You know what I'm talking about? Where's my son? It's like they innately know, right? Except for the Glicks. They don't always know. You know, I'm just kidding. That was an inside joke. And all of a sudden, and she was like, Jacob. And she ran back toward the bedrooms, and I'm assuming she looked in the room where Hannah was a baby and taking a nap, and she looked in the bedroom, and she looked in Jacob's bedroom, and she looked everywhere. And then I heard her, before she even came back out of the hallway into the kitchen area or the dining area where I was standing, I heard her say my name. And if you're married, you know that the way your wife says your name, you can tell I'm in trouble, she's happy with me. There's a honey-do list coming, whatever it might be, you know. And I knew, like, when she said my name before she came around the corner, I knew that she did not find Jacob. I did some interpretation there. She did not find Jacob, and she was getting ready to go into full-throttle panic mode. And she came around, and so I went out. I noticed the door was open, and I stepped right out those glass doors, and I perused our backyard and looked over to the neighbor's yard, and then I looked over to the left out the back door, and our neighbor to the left had a pool. Well, you know, some of you already know immediately what I thought. He's in the pool. And I, like a gazelle, I didn't ask anybody's permission if I could get in their pool or be around. I ran and I vaulted over the fence and I pulled myself up onto the deck. It was kind of an above ground pool, had a deck around it, a little wall. And I pulled myself up and looked over there. There was nothing. The water had not even a ripple in it. But I will tell you, I did not experience relief. I didn't. You know why? Because my son was still lost. I got down off of the pool, and my wife, she had her phone out, and she already dialed 911, and she was about to hit call. And I was like, don't call 911. Let's just all be calm. He's around here somewhere. And she was like, we got to find him. I said, I know we got to find him. And so she went out, because here's what she thought. I thought he's drowned in the pool. She thought he went out by the front of the house by the street, and somebody has stopped and grabbed him up and taken him off. So she went around to the front, and I went over then across the backyard into the other backyard and started to come back around. And my wife came around, and she's walking around with the phone. I'm going to call 911. I was like, don't call 911. We don't need, any second he's going to turn up. And so she makes another lap around the house. She's making circles around our house. I'm running back and forth, making longer breath every time in the backyards of the houses. And I'm kind of looking down the woods to see if he's down there, but I'm thinking, surely he didn't walk off into the woods. And I'm going back and forth. And finally my wife comes around here, and she's like, and I said, don't call 911. She said, I'm calling 911. And she called 911. Now, I knew at that point when she said, I'm calling 911, she was crying, she was upset, and I am not going to stand in the way of her calling 911, or they'd come pick me up, you know what I'm saying? So she called 911, and so I run off kind of behind the pool, the backyard, so I'm off in that direction. I run off, and I run down the hill, and I mean, I am still, my adrenaline's kicked in, my heart is beating. Some of you are parents, you know what I'm talking about, and I'm full on ready. I'm ready to run 10 miles if I need to, and I'm running down. Well, the problem is, when you're running fast, and you go down a steep decline, I don't know if it's physics or geometry or what, but something says, you know, you come out there and you're going to fall farther. And so I'm like running, and I wish it was on video because I would win something for that video. It'd go viral or something. Because I was like running, and then I would like, and then you're like, uh-oh, boom. And I remember hitting, and man, I just rolled. I didn't even feel a thing. I rolled, jumped back up, I'm running. I remember one time I was running, and I thought, I'm going to break my leg. And I grabbed a little tree. I was like Tarzan. I was like, oh, I didn't do that. And I ride this tree down. And at some point, I'm booking so fast down that hill that I'm probably from here to the back doors of the sanctuary from a deer. Well, I am thinking enough to know that if that deer's standing there, of course it sees me, and it's like, what is that guy doing? If he had a cell phone, he'd been videoing it right there. But he sees me, and then he just, boom, takes off. And so I'm thinking, well, my son didn't come down this direction because even a little toddler will scare a deer away, you know. And so I start heading back up. I get up, but man, there's people all over. They have the rescue squad there in the county that we were in. They were already there. The ambulance was there with the EMTs. And then shortly after that, the firefighters got there, and the sheriff's deputies, and they run everywhere. But, you know, I didn't care anymore. Now, it was a small town. It was not quite as small as Mackey, but it was one of those small towns where, you know, everybody's got a scanner. You know, it's like, what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. Let's listen to the scanner. Maybe we'll hear something good. So, I'm thinking, what's going to happen? Could you go to the home of Jared Henry? He's lost his son. He did what? They lost their son. Where'd they lose him at? I don't know. He was in the kitchen, but he's gone now. I think he followed the cat. Were they watching him? No, they were having a conversation. Well, that's kind of silly. Yeah, that's silly. But she's upset about it now. The wife's real upset. The husband, he's just like running around like a gazelle, you know, in the woods. I don't know what he's doing. And, you know what? I didn't care about any of that. I didn't care what people thought about me. I didn't care if people were going to talk about me. I was back down in the woods looking about midway right behind our house and just kind of anywhere I could to see anything. And all of a sudden I heard somebody say, I found him. And I could kind of hone in on the direction that it came from, and I started running in that direction. I was running. When I came up over kind of a little, I was on the decline, but when I came up over kind of the hill of it, I saw this firefighter, I think he was, or maybe the rescue squad member, I can't remember now. I wasn't paying attention to him. And here he was holding my son, my toddler son. And I remember my son was kind of looking at him like, I don't know who you are. He started to get a little worried about it. The look in his face was like, I don't know you. This is not a good situation. It probably wasn't until that moment that he realized this is not a good situation. And I was running, and as soon as he looked over and saw me, you know what he did? He reached out and he did this. And I ran up and I grabbed him into my arms, and I embraced him. Do you know, before that guy gave me my son, if you had said, will you give me everything you've got in your bank account for your son? I would say, yes, I will. Will you sell everything you own and give it to me if I give you back your son? I said, yes, I will. When he was in my arms and I embraced him for 30 seconds until his mom got there. Because she stripped him right out of my arms. She was crying. She was blubbering. I started crying. Then she's like, why are you being like a preacher? I was like, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so glad. Thank you for looking for my son. There was people in the church who had heard it on the scanner. It was getting around. It was like, let's put it out on the text all, and everybody, people showing up. There was a whole crowd. I'm like, man, we get many more. We're going to sing a song and I'm going to preach, I was in no state to do that at that time. Do you know what I experienced? I experienced the very feeling that God does when one lost sheep comes home. There's a lot of things that I care about. There's a lot of things that I like. There's a lot of things that I want to do. But there's nothing greater than celebration in heaven when one lost sheep comes home. Would you all come, brother, too, and sing? Whatever the Lord puts on your heart. I want to ask you this question this morning. One, are you lost? So, well, I go to church. I'm a member of this church. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, are you lost? You're in more danger than you could ever imagine. But the good news is there is a shepherd who is seeking for you, who has a heart for you, who is willing even to allow the preacher and the church board and a congregation to be a little bit uncomfortable while he goes searching for the lost sheep. I just want to invite you this morning, would you come home? Would you receive the embrace of the shepherd? Not to go run in a ditch again, not to get stuck in a crevice again, but to walk with the shepherd. Would you come? If you're a Christian this morning, and there's some things that just got your eyes off the most important thing, distractions, and you say, you know what? I don't really have the heart of the shepherd. Wouldn't bother me if nobody ever gets saved as long as they do what I want to do around here. As long as it's good singing and good preaching and everything's comfortable and we got to have AC. As long as everything's good. But the heart of the shepherd is, even if the AC goes out, I'm still seeking for the sheep. Because it matters more than anything else. And the greatest celebration in heaven won't be necessarily a great sermon or a beautiful song or a full sanctuary. The greatest celebration in heaven will be when that lost sheep comes home to the Father. There will be angels and cherubim and seraphim. They'll play a horn, a harp, a drum, piano, whatever they play. They'll be celebrating. That's the most important thing. Would you stand with me this morning?